Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank my co-host, George Malbreo, for being here. And I am Terry Bonch. Go ahead, George. You have the floor today.
Okay, thank you, Terry. I appreciate it. And welcome, everyone. Today, Monday, July 23rd, California time, by the way, afternoon.
June 23rd.
June 23rd. I'm sorry. What did I say?
You said July.
July. Not July. I'll be turning 77 in July, so I don't want to come too quickly. But I've been invited to talk about my experience in the United States Navy. I went in January 10th of 1967 to December 22nd, 1970. So I served 4 years, active duty and 2 reserve, 1 year Red Reserve and 1 year standby reserve. The common reserve status that most veterans have when you join, and it's a 6-year commitment. Wasn't activated at all during my reserve time, but I will say that if I can use President Kennedy's term, what's been most rewarding for him and for me was that he spent time in the United States Navy, which was his best experience he ever had. And I can say that for myself as well. Again, I went to boot camp in San Diego in January of 67, Company 026. So we were an early company and got out of boot camp first week of April of 67, and I got direct orders to the fleet. So that meant I was going shipboard, not knowing what ship I was going to go on or what type of ship I was going to go on. So I spent 2 weeks vacation at home, and I left for my duty station, arrived in the San Diego bus depot, and took a bus to the naval station on 32nd Street in San Diego, and boarded my ship. I had to go through about 3 ships before I got to mine, and every one of those shipboard ships that I crossed wanted to keep me. I said, no, I got orders to the Perkins, not to this ship. And so I just kept traveling with my sea bag and my handbag. So I was fully loaded. Just before I get to when I arrived on board, I forgot to mention that I'm from Blythe, California. And for some of you who don't know where Blythe is, that's along the Colorado River that separates California and Arizona. It's the desert, and I've been here living in Pedro since about 73, off and on, but permanently in 89. It was interesting because I had to take the Greyhound bus to downtown Greyhound bus station in downtown Los Angeles. So when I got off, I'm an 18-year-old, not recently graduated, but 6 months out of high school. So I had to find myself to the Figueroa Hotel, and I had no idea how to get there, but I found it. And I went in, checked in. They told me who my room was, and I thought I was going to be by myself. But when I checked in the room, there were 2 bedrooms, so there was another person rooming with me, and I didn't get to meet until later on. So for the Navy, those who were joining the Navy stayed at Figueroa Hotel. The Army, I believe, stayed at the Alexander Hotel. I don't know where the Marines would stay if they were going to stay overnight and then go to the induction center. So the next morning for breakfast, this other guy and I walked down to the restaurant. There's about 50 other people waiting to join the Navy as well. So we ate, and then we kind of marched in unison the best we could to the recruiting station downtown LA on Broadway. So we got there, and some of you already know the story if you were back in the 60s. Checked in and were issued a combination locker to put your civilian clothing in, and you were down to your skivvies, and you got a full physical, blood work, and other kinds of stuff, and you had to go up to the third floor. And I won't go into too much detail, but you remember forming the circle and the docs were in the middle. They'd be checking you and then turning you over. They said, everyone in unison, bend over, touch your toes, and boom, they came by to check. And so that was over and done with. We went down to our locker, our civvies back on, and turned in our lockers and took a series of tests. And it was an all-day affair, by the way, because that evening, the 50 that were together marched to the Greyhound bus depot, got boarded a bus that was waiting for a charter bus for us, and they took us to downtown San Diego Greyhound bus depot. From there, we were met by looked like a Navy chief, but there was a cattle truck, and those of you who know what a cattle truck is, you know what I'm talking about. So we boarded the cattle truck standing, and we arrived at the Naval Station, Recruit Training Command Naval Station, San Diego, right next to the NCRD. And we arrived about 11 o'clock. Had an early call at 3 o'clock in the morning, so we got up and didn't brush our teeth or anything. We just got up in our civilian clothing. We walked over to the cafeteria, and so about 4 o'clock in the morning, we ate, and then we lined up again in formation, and we walked back to receiving, and that's where we started getting our cities, dungarees, our utilities, and even got our dress uniforms at that time too. And then we formed and then our company commander, which was Machine First Class Bola. He had been in maybe 10 or 11 years. He had some salt on him. And for the rest of the history, what boot camp's about, Navy boot camp. It was really uneventful. I was the mailman, so every day I would collect the mail. I would run to the post office, run back to the barracks in the morning, and then in the evening, after chow, run to the post office and run back to our barracks, and I would morale is they get pretty low, and you know what I'm talking about in boot camp. But anyhow, fast forward, I arrived on board the USS Perkins DB-877, a destroyer, a very small ship. They call it the Small Boys, and checked in, and they took me down to First Division compartment, checked me in. I changed into my dungarees and boondockers, and they put me over the side. So being over the side the first time on the first day was anyhow, it was the first stage in being welcomed, and that was where the maintenance crew was basically we ate ship deck seamanship and what have you. So for the first 6 months, that's what I did. But before, during my 5th month, I really didn't feel part of the crew yet, although I was treated well. It wasn't until we had our ship's division party. Now, onboard ship, you have a whole ship's party, which includes up to the crew, or you have a department party, which only includes your department, which I was the weapons department. Then you have your division party, which is only your division. We were the deck seaman and boatswain's mate division. So they had it at a local park, and they had like 2 kegs of beer and no hard stuff, just beer, soft drinks, and hamburgers and hot dogs and chips and the condiments. And there I was drinking with our division officer, the first lieutenants, ensigns, and the E6 and E7s, and that's where I felt part of the crew. Bonded with our crew and sharing with the officers, and really just broke out there and had a lot of fun. That's when I really remembered. And from there, we started preparing for our first deployment overseas. So that whole summer, we were our division was super close, showing maps of where the ship was shot at during the signs of possible enemy concentration shore battles. So we were doing a lot about it. So our agreement was in September 27, 1967, underway to Midway Island, and we were there for 20 hours. The crew was allowed to go to the enlisted men's club, and they opened the club for us. So, needless to say, we indulged in some beer drinking and what have you, but there was a limit, and there was a master at arms there to make sure that we didn't get intoxicated, because the crew had to be on full alert because we were going to get underway. First time I saw goody birds, by the way.
I didn't know that was a real thing.
Yeah, they are.
I thought they were only in cartoons.
No, they're really what they are is an albatross.
Oh.
And so, but they don't land like other birds. They kind of hit the ground, stumble, and then stabilize themselves.
I can see why they call them good birds.
And so we got underway, and I don't believe we stopped in Guam, not on this cruise. So we went straight to Yokosuka, Japan, and we were there about 4 or 5 days, and we had another division party. I said, oh, look, this is a partying division. So it was at a bar, and we had food, drinks, and everything. Really, I mean, the ship paid for it. And so that was really nice. Then we got underway, we took out provisions. Then we stopped in Okinawa, and with Okinawa, liberty there. It was pretty good liberty. At least the Marines said they were. It was. I think 3rd Marine Division is there.
Oh.
So the barge came out with ammo, so we rearmed, took out ammunition. We got into the end and at the Bay. Now, I heard rumors about Sleepy Bay. I can't picture it. How a city a place cannot be that wild. Lo and behold, it's wild. Lo and behold, 18 was 19 by then. I was 19. So we were there like 3 or 4 days. Again, took on more ammunition. At that time, the 5.38 could only be fired 10 miles inland. So if you're like 500 yards from the beach or even closer, you could fire it, the round to go 10 miles inland. Well, they had a special Vikings 38 that would fire 12 miles inland. So there was something in the charge that allowed it to go further. I don't know what it was called. So we take on ammo, then we get underway, and we arrive, I believe, 2 Corps near the Trang. Now, for those of you out there who are boots on, I might be wrong, but if I am, I apologize. But I believe 2 Corps. There was I Corps, then 2 Corps. I think that's where the Trang was, I believe. Although they could have been in 3 Corps, right around that area. Anyhow, that's where we arrived. And our first mission was, it was uneventful, but it was something I'd never experienced. Going to general quarters, environments, around, and then get up the casing and everything afterwards. And then hearing the reports of the damage or anything that we did. But at that time, they discontinued the body counts. So we weren't told how many people may have died in that bombardment. But they did report damages, damage, destruction, what have you, of structures. And so that's what we did. And then we went to Vung Tau. Vung Tau is a pretty safe area of Vietnam. It's an island not too far off the mainland. And actually, Vung Tau is the waterway around Vung Tau is where the Saigon River flows into the ocean. So they had a lot of merchant marine ships waiting to go down the river. But most of the time, they needed a destroyer escort to go down so far because it was the river was filled with Viet Cong position. And the merchants ships would come under fire from the shore. Now, Terry, I want to you because your dad was the ninja saga.
Merchants. Sorry. He used armor person. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So, and then they used white phosphorus.
What's the Navy called? Willie Peter.
Willie Peter, yeah. So they took all that stuff down there. I keep forgetting my term. It's been a long time. Anyway, so he did that for quite a number of months. In fact, he did one cruise that lasted over a year. They were taking stuff, coming back, going back. I think they did three trips to and from. And he finally got off the ship. He used to tell us stories, man, about the jets flying and then moved how, they're trying to keep the Viet Cong at bay. And they were fighting like crazy. Well, they couldn't fight on the ship itself because there was a thing at the time that wasn't allowing them to do that. In World War II, they were allowed to fight back, but it was done by the U.S. Navy, and they came under a different name, and I can't remember it right now. And it's pretty interesting how they did that, but it was guys that wanted to become merchant sailors. They went in the Navy, and they said, okay, well, this is the gun you're going to run because you're going to be doing cover as you go through. And if it wasn't for for those guys, I'll tell you, none of our ships would have been, a lot of ships went down, but quite a bit. So my dad was doing that. And then when he would take the fuel, that was way more dangerous. So he'd get off that 3 trip of the cargo run to and from Vietnam, get off that ship, get on a tanker, and fill up right here in Long Beach. And I can't remember the exact place. Like I said, it's been a long time. I was a kid back then. I don't remember a lot of it. I do remember it, but I mean, I don't remember exactly where it was at. But I remember one place, San Pedro, was right across the bay, in fact. And I can't remember that place. It looked like it was on Trump Island. So they would pick up the jet fuel or whatever, and they'd say, okay, get up. And that ship would rest real low in the water. So off we go. My mom, my dad, my brothers, we'd all stand there at the dock, waiting to buy. We don't know when we would see it. So that was just part of the deal. So it takes a certain kind of person to do that. I almost did it. I almost went in the Navy, but I said no. I had something to prove to myself, so I went in the Court in all places. So George, you take over.
Yes, and unfortunately, for merchant ships that were there that went down the river and were in Bangtao and eventually arrived at Saigon Harbor. No Agent Orange benefits. I mean, there was nothing brought up, nothing.
And my dad's ship used to carry it. Yeah, barrels. I remember those big barrels going on.
But also the ship like ours, the water, you drank the water, cooked in the water, and you bathed in the water. I mean, that's fantastic water.
Oh, definitely.
The
It was bad.
and unfortunately, the merchant marines who were vital at that time too, no cases about it, at least from my understanding at this point. So we escorted the ships down there up to a point in where it was safe. We would patrol and also engage the BC and actually down in the Mekong River Delta, which we only went so far down the deltas and then the PBRs would take over. Matter of fact, we would have collaborated missions with the PBRs and 9th Infantry Division, which was down there as well. We engaged a lot. That's what we did. We did receive fire from shore batteries up north. On this cruise, we didn't. That's what we did. In January of '68, the latter part of the month, this was very memorable because the North Koreans captured the Pueblo. And Johnson was meeting with his people, deciding what they to do. But there was another going on in Nam, and that was the Tet Offensive, in which the BC and North Vietnamese regulars into the hamlets and cities in an effort to get the population of Vietnam, South Vietnam, to support their efforts, which didn't materialize, by the way. Quezon.
I like to talk a little bit of that. When my dad went there during that time, I remember we would be watching the news, and there's one part of the harbor, I think it was Vung Tau. Was it Vung Tau that got hit? I can't remember during that time.
Although most
I think most
everything was being hit. Everything.
My mom almost fell off the chair that she was sitting in. Because that's exactly where my dad said that they were at. And when he came home after that cruise, He said, yeah, it was like right there. And luckily the Marine side were surrounded in the ship. The Air Force was flying, they were flying cover, whatever, and they fought it back. But I was like, damn, that was something. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And, everything was on the table. I mean, everything was being hit simultaneously. By the way, it wasn't like one place then another. It was a full-out assault on everything: the cities, the hamlets. Saigon, the U.S. embassy was overrun. Um, a lot was happening. So consider what's happening in Nam, and then consider what's happening with North Korea. Johnson had to make some tough decisions. Now, in February of '67, we left the war zone and started to see if Japan could see support. 3 destroyers and a all-purpose ship, USS Sacramento, which was an oilers ship, everything, ammunition. So we were in the city of Japan for about, I would say, 3 weeks, and just to tow the Pueblo, tie it up and tow it out to sea. Now, that's a suicide mission. We didn't know it at the time, why we were training or practicing towing. But, and then if there's any trouble, which there would have been, the carrier would have provided air support, which had a battalion of 500 Marines, and Marines would be boots on if ground troops were needed. Of course, with the extent of the Tet Offensive and the loss of American lives and the resources needed to fight back the enemy at that time, Johnson decided to scrap the North Korean plan to tow the Pueblo out. So actually, the Pueblo it's still there, but the crew was released a year later. So how do I know this? An officer who was a lieutenant at that time, Lieutenant Standish, great man, wrote a book. He retired full captain in the Navy, and he wrote about the ships he was on, and particularly wrote about the USS Perkins and the task for Perkins to go off the ship, which was, again, a suicide mission, but thank goodness that didn't materialize. So Johnson decided to scrap the plan and focus more on. So that was a tense period. Moved from one tense area to another tense area, supporting the ground troops, particularly up north in I Corps, which was the demilitarized zone, the 2 Corps, down in Hue and Penang area. There was a lot going on there, and of course throughout the countryside. So we were extended a whole month because of that. And so after our extended period was over, we left to return back to San Diego. So our whole deployment was like 8 to 9 months. So we arrived in San Diego April 6th, 1968. And when we arrived, that was when Martin Luther King was assassinated. So we left one hot area and didn't know we're, in a way, arriving in another hot area because there were a lot of riots going on. At that time, we didn't know what it was about.
The civil rights movement.
Yeah, part of the civil rights movement, and also part of the response by the community to the assassination of Martin Luther King. Another tense period. So we're in San Diego for about 3 months, and then we enter the yards in Long Beach, July of '67, and we were there for about 5 months. And it was quite an experience for me. I was 19, still couldn't drink at the bar, and I couldn't drink at the base either. But we found ways to do so, especially around the Pike. I discovered the Pike in Long Beach, the Long Beach Pike. The locals know for that what Long Beach Pike is all about. We found out what the Long Beach Pike is all about. I took advantage of the opportunity to just look around the area, Long Beach, San Pedro. This was before the Vincent Thomas Bridge. The only bridge was that bridge, the Desmond Bridge, going from the base
Desmond
to Long
Bridge.
Beach. Yeah, discovered Wilmington, but couldn't drink any place. So I just hung out and did my work, and we stayed in barracks for about 3 months. Now that was, we really had it made. Living in barracks.
Showers.
We
Go to the mess hall.
We had our passes to the mess hall. That was neat. That was neat. Memorable about that is because June, Robert Kennedy was assassinated. And so the law enforcement was really challenged at that time because of the so the military was asked to support local law enforcement. So each ship had a Marine. So he wanted to do things by the book. I mean, show us how to move forward, how to arms forward, and holy smoke, I've never done this before. And move forward, but goodness, thank God, we were prepared, and that was something that was memorable for me.
And another thing, I just wanted to mention that real quick. The only person that can legally put the Marines in where that situation is the president, because it's always been like that. So he is the only one. I mean, they could request. I think they were going to request it went out during that time because it was crazy here. I remember as a kid, I think I was in junior high. It was nuts. There was something going on here, going on there. And then, I think after that, I think it was Bobby Kennedy got killed too.
Yeah, assassinated the ambassador from jail. Yeah.
It was crazy stuff, man. I'm telling you.
Turbulent times. And
It was turbulent.
And what was difficult too was the protesters. I mean, I was a recipient of being confronted for being in the service. I wasn't called a baby killer or anything like that yet, but spat on, cursed at. So we were encouraged not to wear our uniforms once we left. Well, we had to wear our uniform because back then we weren't allowed to have civvies on board ship or on base.
No, you're not.
We had a phenomenon called locker clubs. Locker clubs where you paid so much money to keep your civilian clothing, and you could change from uniform to civilian clothing and be out there.
Hey, how much was that? Was that like $5 or something?
$5 a month.
I think it was. Yeah,
$5 a month.
Yeah.
Now you weren't supposed to sleep over or eat in there, but we did. I mean, we couldn't sleep over, but we ate there. Okay. Now, what we could sleep over, particularly in San Diego and here in Long Beach too, in Long Beach I should say, is all night movies.
Yeah, go in there.
Excuse me. But you'd see almost a full theater of military men
And just snoring away.
sneaking in your own booze and stuff. And the theater people, the what do you call those, ushers?
The ushers with the
They
flashlights,
wouldn't,
yeah.
I mean, wouldn't even bother with
And
it.
stay out, yeah, leave them alone. Don't do anything, don't say
And it was 50 cents.
nothing. Yeah,
I got to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, and a lot of good Western movies.
oh, that's a good movie, good, bad, and the ugly, hell yeah, man. I tell you.
But that was our last resort. If we didn't have a place to stay, we'd always go to an all-night movie, pay 50 cents, and you have a place to sleep.
Where was that theater? I think it was right there by the bus station, wasn't it?
Yes, it was at
Yeah.
the plaza. It
Yeah.
was called the San Diego Plaza. Yeah.
Man, yeah. Bring up some
Some
memories.
of the when you can't drink in a bar, find places to drink. You know. But let's see what was okay.
I'm
So
sorry.
we complete the yard period, and then we go into what's called refresher training, where we have to refresh on everything all over again: how to tow, guns, ammunition. We had to repaint the ship, the decks, the bosun lockers, the chains, everything had to be, the stacks, superstructures, everything had to look good. But it prepared us for our second cruise. And we left for Western Pacific again, the Vietnam cruise, in April of '69. And got underway, I believe, 16, and arrived in, it's April, so we arrived in May again. We went to, Pearl, Midway, Yokosuka, Subic, and then to the gun line. But we anchored out, and this was the usual thing. We anchored out outside of Lone Town. Lone Town was like maybe 50 yards away. That's how close it was. And we could go on.
That was a dangerous town at one time.
Well, actually, Lone Town was a safe area.
Yeah.
But however, we couldn't get liberty because in case there was something got hot in Lone Town, we had to go away. We had to have the crew. So again, we anchored out, and from there provided gunfire support. We'd go down the Saigon River again to provide support for the ground troops that are there, particularly the 9th Infantry Division, which was down in the Delta and the tributaries. That it was like the first cruise on the gun line, providing support for the troops, being with the carrier, providing carrier support, and search and rescue. That's the area in the Tonkin Gulf where the two shot up to land on the carrier. The pilot would be able to check and land outside of the 12 island and get rescued by either destroyer or it's interesting. I mean, we're so close up north. The carrier would be about 20 miles offshore. We would be closer. The island, we don't know what area in the ocean they would land. But the North Vietnamese gunboats would be patrolling all the time. We would see them. They would be easy targets, but because of the rules of engagement at that time, you couldn't do anything. Only if a pilot bailed inside the 12-mile limit,
And they were being shot at.
then we could engage because so that didn't happen. There were some close calls, though. It didn't happen. So in September, early September of '69, I got injured. A round fell on my toe. Almost severed my toe. I spent 30 days in the hospital in Sasebo, Japan. And that's some good liberty. And I was so angry that I couldn't get liberty. The doctor let me go. I had my surgery, 2 minor surgeries. I even had a skin removal to place for my wound, so it would encourage growth, close my wound even closer. But it didn't take, so it extended me another 2 weeks. Yeah, the first time I had rice with my needles 3 times a day. Had a scoop of rice for breakfast, a scoop of rice for lunch, and a scoop of rice for supper. We had Japanese cooks, so rice was part of that.
The reason why I was laughing is I was married to a Vietnamese woman, and we had rice every single meal. And I asked her one time, "Hey, can you make some potatoes?" "No, I'm not gonna make no potatoes. I'm gonna make rice." And that's the way she felt about it. And
It's easy to make.
Yeah, it's right on the stove, whatever, 20, 30 minutes, whatever, boom, boom, done.
These rice makers is even quicker now.
Oh, yeah, gosh. That reminds me, I need a better one. The one I have is getting old.
So, I get injured and spent days in the hospital, and the doctor doesn't let me go after 30 days. Says, "Doc, I'm leaving. I'm going back to my ship. It's heading home, and I'm going to be on board and get there with the crew in town." I said, "No, I don't want to let you go, but if you go, you're going against medical advice." "Yes, understood, sir." Besides, I haven't had a drink from anything, nothing, for a long period of time, because we were out at sea for a long time too. So I get a plane from, I don't know if it's Marine Air Base or Navy. Either way, I got a flight to Tachikawa Air Force Base in Tokyo, and from there, some other sailors and Marines pulled our resources together and had a cab, and made it to Yokosuka, the base. We call it Yoko. And I got on board an hour before we got underway. So we get back, we go to San Diego, we stop in Pearl, and then go to San Diego, and get there October, and we start preparing for our next cruise. I said, "Holy smokes." And at that time, the Vietnamization of the war was underway. President Nixon was turning over all the responsibilities, hardware and everything, to the South Vietnamese because of the fallout. And at the same time, there were a lot of early outs of 2 years, 6 months. I said, "Hey, it's my opportunity to submit for an early out." Well, I did, and it was refused. It was rejected, and it was and closer to go. It was July 1970. They told me not to put it in because it let go. I mean, there are other guys here who are getting here 6 months out, and I've been a good sailor. Boats, out the boats, said, "We need you. We have a young crew, inexperienced crew, experienced men," and I understood. I said, "Okay, I'm fine. I'm fine with that." So we go overseas, and more of the same. Bug Chow, firing down in the Delta up the Saigon River. But this was memorable because we were attacked by North Vietnamese gunboats. And they get your number. They recognize his whole number, 777. So there's a third time overseas, and not counting the cruises before that I wasn't on board, but cruises before. And so, they remember numbers. I said, "Oh, here comes 877. I think we're going to," just my thinking, my imagination, but I may not be too far off. But anyhow, we're attacked by the North Vietnamese gunboat as well as shore batteries, and we were anchored out. So we had to drag anchor means getting underway and dragging that anchor as we're getting underway. So we were able to silence the guns and deal successfully with the gunboats, and we're in the combat action ribbon for that engagement, August 26th. And to me, that was the highlight of our cruise. So we had orders to go to Singapore for R&R. And so we were going to cross the equator. So finally, we'll be a shellback. So we started getting ready, and we had our King Neptune with a big dude, big belly, and so all the slop and everything was being saved. And lo and behold, they changed our orders. We're not going to cross the equator. We're not going to Singapore. We're going to Hong Kong. And I've been to Hong Kong twice. So in my other cruises, we went to Hong Kong, Taiwan, and some other places that I didn't mention. But I've been to Hong Kong twice, and I didn't want to go to Hong Kong again. So,
You were tired of firecrackers.
yeah. And Hong Kong was nice too. I really liked it, but I wanted to go to Singapore. So I went up to the XO's offices. XO, you got to tell me we're still going to cross the equator at some point. I can't guarantee you both. So I'll extend, meaning that I will stay on board until we come back. And I was thinking of shipping over. But at that time, my mentality was different, and that was my biggest mistake, not staying in. I have to admit. So I get flown back. I fly off the carrier, which was an experience in itself, not on a jet, but on the old mail plane. Propeller shaking, rattling.
Direction.
So we make it into Subic, and we take a bus, middle of the jungle, dirt road, to Clark Air Force Base. And from Clark, took a DC-8. A lot of military personnel and their dependents fly into Hawaii. There for 3 hours, and pound some drinks. And we were out to sea for a while. Then fly to Travis Air Force Base, and there took a cattle truck to Treasure Island. And after 1 week at TI, I was separated. So that's my naval experience. I was more out at sea and overseas than I was stateside. But that was okay. That was my duty, and I did it to the best of my ability, and I loved it. And I should have stayed in. What I'm going to talk in future podcasts is I'm 100% disabled. And I started at 10% to finally get 100%. It took me 12 years. So I want to share that experience in a later podcast so that those of you who serve their country are struggling or fighting for their claims, I've got information for you. And I'm willing to share that information with you, how to get there. And we'll do it. We'll do it.
All right. Thank you very much, George. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. My pleasure.
And we will see you all next time. Thank you very much. Bye now.
Man, God goes by so fast here. I didn't realize how much time it is. Go to the bathroom.